To get into the details, the simplicity of skipping breakfast, basically 12 hours without sugar or calories. If you just said, you know what, I'm going to commit every night to stop eating by 7 p.m. If we could just pick a time, 7 o'clock at night, I'm not going to eat. And in fact, if you ever go to university nutrition, they'll say by about 7 p.m., your pancreas actually decides to shut down and it's not working as well anymore. So that means you're not going to process sugars very well. That means you're not producing enzymes to break down, fat and protein and sugars, etc., protease, amylase, and lipase. So, everything's much less efficient if you're eating after that time anyway. But if we stop eating by 7 o'clock in the morning, the liver runs out of all the stored glucose.
Welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I am Espen. Today I'm joined by not only one of the leading experts in detoxification and longevity in the world, but also a brother I consider to be one of the people in my life that I've had a close relationship with, that I've been able to learn a lot from, and also a person that I'm really, really excited to actually share his message with as many people as possible. This is none other than the incredible Tyler Tolman. As I mentioned, detoxification and longevity expert. He's devoted his life to the practice of how to live better, feel better, heal better, and actually have a beautiful expression of health. So, bro, we're gonna go deep today into all of those topics. I want to say a special welcome. How are you, mate?
Fantastic. Thanks for the intro.
Man, we could go in a direction with that intro, right? But the bottom line is that you are one of the leading experts in the world in knowing how to live an incredible life, how to be remarkably healthy, and also how to improve our health and vitality as we age. I want to start with your story because I know, being the son of Don Tolman, you haven't always been the person that you are today. When you were younger, there were, you lived in a very different way. So I'd like you to start with your story, please, from where you were when you were younger, why you made the transition into longevity and detoxification, and where we find ourselves today.
I think like a lot of people in their youth, especially growing up in the Western world, I felt very not loved and a lot of separation. I was raised by my mother, so my father actually wasn't around, and I was the youngest of 3 children. And I went to a public school, drank the box milk and ate the hot dogs and the pizza. And, my mom was a little bit more health conscious because of my father, but it was still occasionally McDonald's and things like that. And my older brother was my role model. So, him being 3 years older, by the time he was 15, he was into cigarettes, smoking weed, drinking alcohol, Metallica, Pantera, let's go. And so I was 3 years younger. I'm only 12, but I'm just like, I got to be cool like my older brother. So I was smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, smoking weed, doing dumb things. And my mother caught me. And so that was my first opportunity for her to send me to stay with my father. And that gave me that 180, life is completely different. Living on a farm, growing your own food, fasting. He was going for full immortality, ascension, and running programs to assist people back to health that had cancer and all these types of conditions. So I would say that it was the dichotomy between probably the most righteous, healthy, beautiful, loving, connected to nature way of living, and then traditional Western city public school, not a lot of love. Especially for somebody who is very expressive like me. I definitely would have been medicated had I been born 5 to 10 years later as attention deficit and all this stuff, because my imagination was strong and I had my own opinions. But yeah, having that dichotomy between the two, as the years progressed, the more I was in the Western kind of world, going to school and living with my mom, I think the more I got into drugs and alcohol when I wasn't with my father. And it drove me into a level of depression and a level of self-hatred. I didn't really like who I was. I didn't like where I was going. I didn't like anything. Well, I couldn't say that, but I went more and more into like this kind of depressive mode until I hit rock bottom and like actual contemplation of suicide. And, you know, when you have like, for someone like me, I feel like I'm a very conscious, onto it person, love life. You know, I've always had like that exciting, happy, you know, kind of personality. So to actually contemplate taking my own life was a big deal. Once I recognized like, oh my God, I just considered like killing myself. Like, what am I even doing? And I knew in that moment, like I have to change everything. So there was like kind of a single moment. I was 16 years old where I was just like, I have to go live with my father and commit my life to being of service and being someone else, because I hate this energy of what I am and all my friends. And, you know, you get kind of stuck and caught up in what you create from that perspective. So that's, you know, I did a lot of damage to myself early on with partying from the age of 12 to 16. And then, you know, I still had in and out times, but I'm more committed to being around my father at least and listening to what he had to say and slowly taking on the practices and principles that he taught. But at least being around that really positive, bright, passionate experience. So that's kind of like where I got started and where my inspiration came from, obviously, my father.
Thank you for sharing, bro. And I don't know if listeners or viewers can resonate with how they also have been in a spot where it might have gone so far that they feel like or think about ending their lives. I know I have in some of the experiences that I had when I was younger, about the same age as you. You know, my mother was an alcoholic. My father wasn't around much. And so there was a lot of toxicity in the household. And many times I contemplated the different ways of, you know, ending my life. And luckily, similar to you, to change my path. And I just wonder, it's kind of like a given, but I'd like your take on it. How do you see the link between an unhealthy lifestyle and depression and or those type of experiences mentally and emotionally?
Yeah, well, that's a multifaceted conversation. I do have the big belief in like what Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. So it's the microbiome that we create through bad foods, processed foods, dead foods, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners, like all these things, smoking, drinking, that's destroying the gut microbiome. And then, you know, the actual chemical, you can look at it from the physical perspective, and then it leads to a level of depression. But I'm also a big believer that when you have, you know, mental support and love and, you know, the whole mental spiritual side where you feel connected to something, you're feeling loved, you're loving yourself, you know, the environment's a big factor. And of course, vibrationally, when you're feeling loved and being around people and in situations where you're passionate and kind of loving your life, you're probably going to naturally choose, you know, fruits, vegetables, higher vibrational foods. So it kind of all plays together. But yeah, you know, there's a huge connection with what we're putting in here and then how we're feeling. And there's a multifaceted way of approaching it. I do believe that if you're in a really bad place, if you just force yourself to actually eat bananas and mangoes, as much, you know, debate there is about the sugar and all this, like you eat fresh, high vibrational fruits, you know, preferably organic, vegetables and, you know, good healthy things, drink juices, make smoothies. There's going to be a tendency, there's going to be a change and a movement in expression. There's going to be a physical vibrational change that I believe will actually move you into like, oh, I have more energy and I have a little bit more happiness. In fact, the word fruit literally means joy. And the word vegetable means to strengthen. If you look at the root history of the words, vegetables strengthen us. Fruit adds lightness and joy. You know, we call somebody fruity, you know, somebody that's got a lot of energy and kind of bouncy, joyful, is kind of a fruitcake type of person. So I'm a big believer that if you just force those foods into your life, it will actually make a shift. Or if you radically work on the mindset, then you'll also get there, and there will probably be a natural shift with what you're putting in dietarily.
I love that. And I could not agree more. In fact, you don't have to do one without the other. You can certainly do both. And when I was in
Yes.
clinic, I actually did that. I did that for 12 weeks. I ate crap food, drank alcohol, and, went through the process just to test it. And I was still hanging around the same kind of people. But man, I actually got depressed in I think about 6 or 7 weeks. And I committed for a 12-week period. And then, I'm just blown away by the lack of education and awareness in our society when it comes to the link between how we live and how we eat and how we feel, of course. And this is, granted, for those of you who have done this, you would know. But if you've never actually taken the time out to go through a process of purification, Tyler and his work is one of the best places to go. So I want to segment over to that conversation, brother. I started my fasting journey in 2016 when I did 30 days on just liquids, and then I went to Peru and did some plant medicine after having purified myself, and then from then on I've been a vivid faster. I normally do 10 days of fasting prior to an event that I run. I often do 10 days on water. And I know, back in the day, we say you can go, only so long without food, but that is a myth. We know we can go a very long time without solid foods. In fact, the majority of people are overfed and undernourished. And so I want to talk quickly about fasting, because my take on it is, and I'd love your opinion, the more, and this is generalized, it's not for everybody, but the majority of people, if we reduce the calories and increase the nutrients, for example, you're drinking juice, I can see, I normally drink celery juice myself in the mornings. But I found for me now, I've been living with a practice of intermittent fasting from Monday to Friday, where I only eat about 8 hours a day and I fast for 16. And then on weekends, I'm a bit more relaxed with when I eat. But I want to ask you about fasting and about its potential to become more empowered and or even superhuman. And then later we'll talk about ascension and the Jedi training on this is a whole nother level. But let's start with the fasting side of things first, bro. Where do one start? What is the power of it? And what can we do from today if we know that we want to take our health to the next level?
Yeah, well, that's a space I've been in for a very long time. Even back when I was a young teenager, I went to stay with my dad. He was guiding people through water fasting, juice fasting. He had gone up on a mountain and fasted for 40 days and 40 nights on water, 5 years in a row. He was talking about stem cell. He was talking about regeneration. He had a woman with like complete paraplegic surgery, severed the spine, fully recover, regrow her spine, walking again. We've got it documented. Like there's so many cases of people with cancer, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease. So, when it comes to fasting, that's the stuff of miracles. That's the stuff of Moses and Jesus and Buddha and all the greatest of greats for thousands of years. And, then it's like, okay, well, we could bring it back and have like a real scientific conversation, or where do we get started? And it's like, it depends on the person. If somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, Tyler, I've got tumors in different places, or I've got this autoimmune disease and I'm suffering and I'm dying, I'm not going to say, well, maybe we'll put you on, 16-8 intermittent fasting and this and this. We're going to be like, okay, well, you probably need 30 days of prep and 30 to 40 days of fasting, and then another couple of months of being guided out of the fast and back into a healthy situation. And in those situations, we see people heal super chronic disease. And, the interesting thing is, like, today we're like, oh, hey, I'm going to do this thing called intermittent fasting for my health and maybe for some more energy. But if we go back thousands of years and look at different groups of really healthy people, the ancient Egyptians called the Therapeutae, just to the north, the Essene kind of Jewish group, and how they lived a life of purity, and all these people around the world, that was just normal to them. They're like, oh, we can't even imagine waking up and eating food and then, taking a few hours and then eating food and then taking a few hours and then eating food and cleaning up. Like, how do you get anything done? Like, so, there was a very clear situation where these were just natural ways to live, to keep you young and keep you healthy and keep you mentally on top of things. Whereas today it seems so out there to skip breakfast. So, to get into the details, the simplicity of skipping breakfast, we basically 12 hours without sugar or calories. If you just said, you know what, I'm going to commit every night to stop eating by 7 p.m. If we could just pick a time, 7 o'clock at night, I'm not going to eat. And in fact, if you ever go to university nutrition, they'll say by about 7 p.m., your pancreas actually decides to shut down and it's not working as well anymore. So that means you're not going to process sugars very well. That means you're not producing enzymes to break down, fat and protein and sugars, et cetera, protease, amylase, and lipase. So everything's much less efficient if you're eating after that time anyway. And I know I'm spewing out a lot of information here, but if we stop eating by 7 o'clock in the morning, the liver runs out of all the stored glucose. Okay. And that's a really good thing, because when the liver runs out of the stored glucose, it's going to mop up all the excess glucose, start to clean up the insulin and everything else inside the body. That's really the main underlying cause of aging and death and diabetes and cardiovascular disease and cancer. Like all the lifestyle diseases that people just think are genetic are really linked to this excess buildup of glucose and insulin and aging. Even the word age is basically glycated end products, advanced glycated end products, which is where age comes from. So 12 hours, then your body starts to burn fat, starts to clean up all the mess. Within about 14 hours, your body kicks up human growth hormone just to build your muscle and maintain that. You start to eliminate visceral fat. You start to clean out the cells of all the waste. Your body starts to eliminate viruses, bacteria. Like really, it's the greatest way to heal is at any time to just skip a couple of meals and clean out the excess. And you'll know this because you live this lifestyle. All of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I don't eat anything in the morning and I have endless energy. I had my son on me 25 kilos this morning and hiked up to the top of Mount Coolum, and that's just, part of the start of the day, which is a pretty big deal. But yeah, so you'll realize you actually have more energy, you feel better, you have more mental clarity. And then by about 24 hours-ish, depending on what you're doing, then you'll start to burn more ketones, more fat, making more ketones. And as you're burning this fat, your body releases what are called embryonic style stem cells.
Oh, let's go. Let's talk about this. This is next level. Listen to this, guys. Go ahead.
So this is where the magic happens. Embryonic style stem cells have the power to take the place of any cell inside of your body and replace it if it's damaged or weak. Okay. Now I'm going to put some important caveats here that listeners need to tune into. So 24 hours, and this could be, let's say you eat your last meal at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and you just eat dinner the next day. It's just like dinner to dinner. You're already in that stem cell production and getting so many benefits just going from one dinner to another dinner. But if you could skip that and go even further, now your body's fully just burning fat. Most of that is probably going to be visceral fat first. Okay. So, if we could look at any human, and the amount of visceral fat that you have is pretty much equal to the amount of health or disease you're experiencing. Visceral fat is the stuff that's storing all the toxicity. So, you eat stuff with pesticides, you're exposed to smoke or any type of toxicity. The visceral fat's the stuff that's really taking that on. And it's like this constant toxic fat inside the body. It surrounds the heart. It builds up around the liver. People got fatty liver. People got heart conditions. Builds up around the pancreas, can lead to insulin resistance, diabetes. It builds up in all these spots, can create sleep apnea, all these different types of problems that people experience. So you're getting rid of that. You're producing these stem cells. Now, the key factor here is when you're making these stem cells from ketosis, they will regenerate your digestive system only. Okay. It's not going to repair your eyes. It's not going to repair your brain. It's not going to repair anything else. It's only going to focus on repairing your digestive system, which is actually the most important thing that could possibly happen. Because again, Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut. So the body has this intelligence that when you start fasting, it's the gut that gets the first stem cells and everything's working, and you get this gut repair. So your digestive system starts to work more efficiently. You start to digest your food more efficiently, meaning you're starting to get the nutrients from your actual food. A lot of people are deficient just because of gut inflammation. So fasting removes the acid, removes the inflammation, brings in these stem cells and starts to heal it. And then all of a sudden you start to function the way that you're supposed to and actually get some of the nutrients when you're drinking the juice, etc. Right? So then there's another magical point. And the next magical point is going to be after 48 hours. So for the first 24 hours, now you're starting to make all these stem cells. 48 hours, you got all the stem cells, it's healing your gut. And then there's an enzyme referred to as pKa. This is an enzyme that exists that doesn't allow the uptake of stem cells anywhere outside of your gut. So if you ever go to a clinic and you pay them $30,000, they'll basically do liposuction, pull your fat out, cultivate it into stem cells, and inject it into people's injury sites, and it immediately heals their injuries. If you got the money, you want to travel, go do that, that's great. But you can actually save money, not eat anything, stay at home. And within 48 hours of fasting, then that pKa enzyme is naturally suppressed. So now anything after 48 hours, those stem cells start to travel through your blood, through your lymphatic system, and basically find parts of your body that are damaged and start to repair it. Your arteries, your heart. And this is why people on extended fasts have corrected their vision, literally take off their glasses, and all of a sudden they can see better again. There's a couple of different things that take place. Let's say you've ever been shot, you've ever been stabbed, you've ever fallen off a bike, you've ever had major injuries. Well, at that injury site, you're going to have scar tissue. So while you're fasting, something called autolysis reduces scar tissue, takes all that extra scar tissue, turns it back into amino acids to maintain your muscle, and then stem cells come in and repair it, and you can't even tell you ever had the injury before. So, this is a pretty, hard to believe for most people magic wand that actually goes through and heals and repairs the body in a magical way. And, it's just fasting. And when I say that, just fasting, there's a lot to learn to do an extended fast. The main reason for fasting is to remove the acid from a health perspective and support the body to heal instead of like creating more acid and getting more toxic and dying. So we have 4 channels of elimination. These are defecation, urination, perspiration, and respiration. So the way my body eliminates acid is pooping, peeing, sweating, and breathing. And if I do all of those things really well, that's going to keep me from getting sick, no matter what diet I have, as long as I keep all these channels of elimination open. Okay. So while you're fasting, all the acids are coming out of your body, plus ketosis does create a bit of acid. It's called ketoacidosis. A lot of people on keto would kind of know what I'm talking about. So then it becomes of the utmost important to keep the digestive system clear. This is where enemas or colonics come in. And if people don't want to do enemas or colonics, you could do a salt flush, or you could have a little bit of castor oil and drink it down. That will flush everything out of the digestive system. Drinking copious amounts of water so that you're consistently reducing the acid load and urinating it out as uric acid. Sweating in a sauna every day. We take people through hot and cold therapy, and then breathing exercises consistently to constantly just get rid of excess acid, oxygenate the cells, and heal.
I've heard that a lot out of the 4 ways of purifying the body that you just mentioned, breathing is actually a major component. Some say that the breathing is the majority component. How much detoxification happens through correct breathing, would you say, if you were to give it an estimate?
Yeah, well, there's 2 ways to look at this. The main channel of elimination is defecation. So our entire lymphatic system is pulling acids away from every single cell of the body. Most of that drains into something called the cisterna chyli, which exists around the belly button. So if you ever have lymphatic massage, they're going to massage everything to the belly button if they're smart. And then from there, it's dumping it all into the colon. So every time you go poo, you're getting rid of all that excess acid. So that's a huge channel of elimination. But I would say this is probably unknown, and there'd be a big debate because there's an exchange between the lymph and the blood. Okay. Mm-hmm. The lymphatic system, think of it as like blood is electric and the lymph is magnetic. And the lymph is consistently pulling, we got this electromagnetic system inside the body, the two different fluid systems. The lymph is pulling all the bad stuff out of the blood because the blood needs to be healthy, needs to be, constantly flowing, needs to be alkaline, needs to be all these things, right? So the lymph is there to consistently support the blood. But at the same time, every cell in our body, we eat food, we breathe air, glucose, oxygen goes inside of the cell, feeds the mitochondria. The mitochondria make energy and they release a little bit of acid. 76 trillion cells inside of our body, all getting rid of a little bit of acid. Okay. And how do we get rid of that much? 76 trillion cells all making acid every time we're eating food and making energy. How are we going to get rid of that? Right here. That's a lot of acid, right? Yep. Even better, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Even better, in through the nose, hum it out through the mouth. Nitric oxide in, right? Breathing it out. So, for example, if I could take a water machine and fill this up with, let's say, an 11 alkalinity, anything under 7 being acid, over 7 being alkaline. 11 is highly alkaline. You can put these drops into water that show you the alkaline nature, the acid nature of it. It's purple when it's super high alkaline, blue when it's slightly alkaline, yellow when it's slightly acid, and red when it's really acid. Okay. So let's just say I make some super high alkaline water that's purple, and you can see it as purple. All I'd have to do to change that from purple to red, acidic, is this. Get a straw and literally blow bubbles into it within 2 breaths, 2 to 3 out breaths. Just the carbon dioxide acid that's coming out of my body will take it from high alkaline all the way down to acid, 3 breaths. So that's pretty shocking, how much acid is coming out every time we exhale. I say it's the first principles of health for a reason. Air, water, sunshine, exercise, whole foods, relationships, passion. Air is number 1. If you learn how to breathe and do it effectively and consciously all the time, my Egyptian teacher would say, if you breathe consciously indefinitely, you'll never die.
Oh, I like this. We're about to go there. We're about to go there. Tyler, for those who don't know this, I've invited you to speak on the quantum stage because I want people to get access to these teachings. I myself have realized that I, for many, many years, was eating food, trying to quote unquote bulk up and get strong and whatever. And I was measuring my biological age and my function of all the different organs. And I was healthy, right? But I was not anywhere near as healthy as I am now. I'm now in my 40s. My biological age is 31. My average heart rate variability over the last month is 120. So it's almost impossible for a person, the average person, to be able to get to the level that I'm at with fitness, scientifically proven. And I'm not saying that I'm superhuman, because I'm not superhuman. Well, I am performing at a superhuman level, but I'm not saying genetically I'm superhuman. I'm saying the way I can perform, traveling all over the world, doing 60 events per year, having more energy and a higher heart rate variability after a 3-day event, it's practically unheard of. And I would say a lot of this comes from the teachings that you're sharing with us today, comes from the fasting, comes from the protocols that any person can apply. And by the way, doing something like intermittent fasting and into a fast is literally going to save you money. Okay, because you're not going to be eating all the crap food. You're not going to be spending the money on the alcohol. You're not going to be wasting your time, as you mentioned, doing the dishes and doing these things. You're going to be having more money in your life from eating less. And then let's look at this. Now you have more energy So now you are more loving and present with your children. You are way more productive at work. I mean, once you get into the ketosis, as you mentioned, I find myself on day 2 and 3 of my water fast, I've got so much energy, but it's not like scattered energy. It's coherent energy. And I can work for 15 hours a day, present in a beautiful state, and I can get more done in one day than I can get in a whole week. Right? So I want to talk about this because this is absolutely next level. Now that we've covered the nutrition, the lifestyle, the mental side of things, we've already discussed. We've even talked about fasting. And by the way, I want to make this point. What Tyler just mentioned before, this is not I listened to this podcast with Espen and Tyler, and now I'm just going to stop eating for a week. No, it's not like that. Tyler made this point really, really clear before. If you have never fasted, there are protocols that are different compared to someone that is an intermittent faster or an advanced faster. All right, this is extremely important. And I know you cover this really well in your programs, Tyler, where you literally individualize and tailor the approach for every single person coming through to make sure that it's right for them, to start at the level that they're at and to be able to, not only get healthier, but I mean literally reverse aging. Literally reverse aging. And I am in the similar belief to you that there should be no need to age. There are a lot of things that are slowing down aging. There are a lot of things that are speeding up aging. But like I said, my biological age is 31. And this has been proven through a lot of tests over time. So I want to transition now from the fundamentals. I consider them, if you want super performance, if you want to be healthy, you want to have vitality, you want to have energy, what we're talking about today is a non-negotiable. It just has to be part of it. And then, what I realized when I started fasting, the first thing that came up for me, brother, was emotions, right? And so I'm like, hang on, now I'm not eating, so now I'm feeling, right? And now I'm recognizing, hang on, have I been comfort eating? And I would say, if I had to give it an estimate, at least 50% of what I was eating back in the day was not because I was hungry, it's because I was emotional. So I go and eat a food to have the dopamine, the serotonin hit, then I feel better, and then I have a crash. All right? So let's just quickly touch upon when we make these transitions and we start to understand that everything is energy, and then we have the ancient cultures and what the ancient, particular Egyptian philosophies are saying about this, because I know this, in terms of your Jedi training, which is basically ascension training, is a huge part of your life and something that I'm excited to attend as well. But let's talk a little bit about ancient cultures, what they knew thousands of years ago that we are discovering now, and how you are implementing these ancient wisdom practices into life in terms of ascension, if you will.
Yes. So there was one piece you said, with the science, and we can literally reverse the aging process. I just wanted to mention one of those studies. It comes from University of Chicago. It's called Whole Biological Laboratories, where they actually fasted humans, and they took men in their 40s and they fasted them for 2 weeks, water only. And what they did is they looked at every single cell inside the body, and they can tell how old somebody is by the cell to nucleus ratio. And as we age, the nucleus gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And they can literally look at any cell in your body, look at the cellular age, right? So they took 40-year-old men, fasted them for 2 weeks. Their cellular age went from 40 to 17 in 2 weeks. Now, when I talk about cellular physiology, I'm talking about every cell in the body reverts back. And they say in the study, it's a permanent change, meaning that your cells go back to 17. Obviously, you're going to start aging again, but you've literally reset it. You reset the metabolism, you reset the size, telomeres, the whole thing. It's pretty cool stuff. So then, if you want to transition a little bit to the ancient past. So the ancient past, there's a huge unpacking of the story of where we come from, and the creation process and what was going on, and why are we where we're at today that needs to happen. That's probably at least a couple of hour conversation. But if I could sum it up, I would say that in the beginning, there was a multiplicity of beings involved in our upgrade. And this is going to be, a stretch for people to take on. So you have to just be willing to say, okay, what if, let's just listen here. And it will be a bit of a stretch. But this is documented in the Egyptian literature. This is also documented in the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, and they both match up. And essentially what was happening is there was one being involved who was a very highly spiritually evolved, let's call him individual, that played a role in genetics, and it makes sense for the missing link. We have the local hominids here. We can track all of our history with Homo erectus and, caveman and Denisovan and all the human kind of family along these different lines. But then for some reason, there's this missing link. And all of a sudden we have human beings and we're walking around with intelligence and prefrontal cortex and doing all these amazing high level degrees of things. And there's a real reason for this. And let me just say that the main initiator that played a key role in our upgrade and wanted for us to have the greatest upgrade possible, even beyond potentially where these beings were at. Okay, this one individual was very spiritually tapped in, but also a high-level geneticist and all these things. This individual knew so much about us and our genetics and their whole structure and everything that's going on in the cosmos. And then you have this other individual who is playing a role that was more of like the organizer, military commander, one that was just kind of there to make sure everything's operating and happening the way that it should. And this individual, the military commander operator, was more based in kind of Mesopotamia, Sumeria, what we know as Babylon, present day Iraq kind of situation. And this other individual, the highly spiritual one, was really based originally in Atlantis and then ended up being basically the one who founded Egypt, the pyramids, the temples, and creating this flourishing race of humans doing all these amazing things and assisting us in the process of upgrading. And so when we look into the history of Pythagoras, Plato, Hippocrates, known as the father of medicine, the father of geometry, all these brilliant individuals from the West, they always hit a point where they couldn't learn any more from the West, so they would all go to Egypt to like really go deep into the mysteries. And whenever they'd go there, of course, they were required to go on these extended programs of fasting and detoxification and getting out of this and more into here. It's called the land of the heart. Ta-Mari was the original name of ancient Egypt, was Ta-Mari, and then it became Kemi, and then it became Egypt. So the reason I'm telling this story is because Egypt really was, the epicenter of all this knowledge and wisdom and origins beyond us as a human family, but knew so much about the workings of, our bodies energetically, physically, all of it, that there was a map for us to go through this process of ascension through, movement and breath and martial arts and physical processes, but also purification practices. And in fact, there was, this left-hand path and a right-hand path. And, the left-hand path is the pathway of the healer and the physician and the teacher. And the right-hand path is the way of the warrior and the magician. And every culture needs these things. You have to have people on the left-hand path to heal and support and nourish and learn about the body and support detoxification and healing for the culture. But you also need your warriors to go out and protect and defend and fight to make sure the other places aren't defeating, etc. But the ultimate, go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't it so that you have to do the left-hand path before you can have the right to be initiated as a warrior, though?
That was the ancient Egyptian way. So if you go to every temple in ancient Egypt, you're going to see a statue in front of every single temple of a man, unless it's been taken away, of course, of a man standing there holding these two, and women too, holding these two golden bars, standing on black granite with their left foot forward. every single statue in front of every single temple standing, you're going to see the left foot forward. And that is saying that I've stepped onto the initiatory pathway of becoming a physician and a healer. I've opened my heart and I've opened my senses. And then they go on to the pathway of becoming a warrior magician. Because when you become a warrior with your heart open and having already healed yourself, then you're not going to become a dark, Sith Lord, destructive, and this is what the whole Star Wars movie was about, is either becoming a Jedi or becoming a dark Sith Lord, service to self or service to others. And in fact, even the Jedi, there's a Jed pillar that was the highest rank of the ancient Egyptian pathway. There's one symbol, and if you go look at, again, if you look on the walls, you're going to see Isis, one of the greatest healers, Sekhmet, and even the men, they hold this ankh that looks like this. This is the symbol of the healer. This is the symbol of regeneration. This is the symbol of immortality. This is a secret of the pathway to raise this energy and regenerate. It represents the penis and the womb, the cross between the masculine and the feminine, the energy that's produced there, and how to use that energy effectively was the greatest of secrets that you'd have to go through all these processes to gain access to. So you would see that in the left hand, that if you saw somebody with one of these symbols, it meant they'd become a physician and a healer and a teacher. And then there was another symbol that's a big rod. It's called a Waz scepter, and it's the scepter of power. And this is what it shows, Zeus would wield lightning bolts and, these sorts of things. It was this staff of power. And that means that you had gotten to the highest degrees of the warrior magician pathway. And then there was this one in the middle called the Jed pillar. And there's only a very few individuals that you see with that Jed pillar, and that means that they were the highest degree of Jedi. And this is talked about in the papyrus. They called them the Jedi, and the papyrus tells stories of these guys manipulating matter, able to work with water, able to literally change the weather and do all kinds of feats of magic. And of course, the Egyptologists there are like, oh, well, this papyrus is all true up until this point, and then it talks about these Jedi, and it talks about them doing all this magic, so maybe it was just fairy tales for children. But it's like, well, maybe it wasn't fairy tales to children. And then all of a sudden you ask people about Moses. It's like, Christians, it's like, well, what about Moses? Moses left out of Egypt. He took a tool that he probably shouldn't have, one of the greatest tools. So the Egyptian military tried to chase him down and get it. But he was trained with the Pharaoh. He was a high-level Jedi, and he knew how to use it. He parted the waters. This massive fireball came out of the sky. And even present day, geology and archaeologists are asking questions. Why is all the sand melted along the Red Sea and all this stuff? I know it sounds absolutely crazy, but, what if, like you're saying, superhero qualities, we move through these massive time scales, as above, so below.
Yeah.
We have 12 hours of light and day, and then we have 12 hours of darkness. And on a larger scale, we're moving through 12,000 years of an enlightened age where people are all loving and working together with a different kind of higher technology, using vibration and using crystals, but in a healthy way. And then we move into this time period of darkness. And that is represented by Set. So the Egyptians said there's Osiris. He's the one that's helping us all to upgrade. And, he's the god of the good and, all these good things, the guy that I was talking about. And then there's Set. He's the one out in the desert lands, the military commander, the one that just wants to control, depopulate, and own everybody, tell everybody what to do. And, even our languaging is like this. It's like, oh, it's daytime and the sun is about to set. The name Set is the evil god of ancient Egypt. The sun sets and then we move into an age of darkness. So it's an interesting thing. I feel that, if people are tuned in enough, they'll realize that we've been in a real age of darkness for a very long time with continual war, continual toxicity and all these different things. But we're really starting to move into a major shift. And when shift hits the fan, of course, there's going to be the greatest battle of good and evil, to try to maintain the power and the structures that have been in place for so long. So, with all that being said, I really think it's time of the return of the Jedi.
Oh, landing the plane. Nice.
Yes,
Okay, so firstly, I have to acknowledge to myself that there's not just a lot to learn, there's a lot to unlearn. I understood some of these things, but now I understand how little that I really do know. And I've been on a similar path for many, many years. And I think what we can first take from this conversation is that there is a lot more to life than we know. The human eye can only see 0.0035% of the colors that exist. The human ear can hear less than 0.002% of the sounds that exist. So if we cannot keep an open mind and say, I can only see and know a tiny fraction of what is real, and then open our minds to the potential of some of this being true and accurate, then I think we're really missing the mark, as it's referred to in the Bible here. So I want to point this out as well. Like, one of my favorite teachings has been over the last few years, leaning into the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and learning about Egypt and exploring this. So I'm really excited to learn more about your teachings and the Jedi teachings and what you do there as well, because I think there's a lot more to it than what we have, what we've experienced up until this point. And so, what if the top is just the bottom of our potential? So I just want to kind of summarize this before we wrap it up and tell people where to go to learn. Because I know right now, at least a lot of the people in my community will be sitting at the edge of their seat going, Tyler,
there's a piece here. There's a piece here that I need to share. So the teachings, when it comes to the Egyptian and the Jedi side of things, the teachings that I'm giving are Hermes Trismegistus. They are the teachings of Hermes.
Oh, doesn't surprise me.
And the 7 Hermetic principles I go very deep into the 7 Hermetic principles and then try to unpack it so that we can actually use it in our lives. The most inspiring part of everything for me, and I know will be for you too, is the fact that we have 12 senses. Okay? We have 12. As above, so below. There's 12 signs of the zodiac above us. 12 different star systems. Inside of my brain, if you just simply Google 12 cranial nerves, you'll see we have these 12 cranial nerves that all feed into the center of the brain, which creates all of our perception. If you look at those 12 cranial nerves, the first 5 are going to be, optic, olfactory, trochlear. So you're looking at smell, sight, taste, touch, all of these aspects on the first 5. And what you said, it's like, oh, we only get a little bit of the spectrum from sight. We only get a little bit of the spectrum from sound. Well, what if I told you that there's a roadmap? If you want to become a bodybuilder, what do? You got to go to the gym and you need to lift in the right way and you need to be consistent. You probably need to find a bodybuilder or somebody who has the roadmap. If you want to go on stage and be one of the best, you got to find one of the best, find a trainer, and you got to be consistently doing that probably, 3, 5 times, 6, 7 times a week for years before you can actually step up onto a stage and anybody will actually look at you like you're serious. Now imagine if you were that serious about opening up all your senses, right? And so there's a roadmap for that. And the roadmap has been passed down throughout time. But it's the same thing. You stand in a posture and you do these 12 different types of movements. So for the 12 cranial nerves, each cranial nerve is associated to a 2-hour period during the day. The 12 cranial nerves are attached to the 12 main organs inside of our body. The ancient Chinese actually have a chart. You can just look it up, 24-hour chart for your organs, and it shows every 2 hours, the energy goes, into your heart, into your lungs, into your liver, into these different places, etc. So the ancient Egyptians had a very specific training that was part of the initiatory process of becoming a Jedi, where they would teach you at a certain time of the day, you would do these breathings and postures and toning and techniques that would radically amplify the energy into this cranial nerve, healing the physical organ it's attached to, but also opening up the sense. Okay. So imagine if you have telepathy, and imagine if telepathy specifically is at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there's a specific posture, exercise, and breathing that if you get up and do this exercise at 5 o'clock in the morning every single day, you're building the muscle for telepathy to the point that you can fully telepathically see, hear, have conversations with people just with the mind.
You know what I'm doing right now? My brain is going, okay, we need to get Tyler Tolman back on, because right now people are jumping out of their seats. Either they're jumping out of their seats or they're going, nah, mate,
crazy.
You're taking it too far. And I know that's going to be both.
I might be taking it a little bit too far. There needs to be a lot more context.
But you know what, bro? For a guy like me, we're just getting started, right? Because I know that there is so much in this. And what's to say that it does work and we do a specific breathing and movement in the morning at this specific time? Like, I've been studying the planets and I've been understanding my cycles and my seasons and fasting certain times when the moon is in my star sign. There's so much more to this.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to get you back on the podcast, bro. Yeah. But before we wrap up, and I know we're getting excited, and as I just said, we're going to have Tyler Tolman on the quantum stage soon. He's not going to go too deep into all of this truest of transformation that I think we're just starting to discuss now today, but we're going to start, and I want to really make this point. Don't go all crazy and I'm going to do all these, everything. No, you've got to start with the purification path. Tyler made this impeccably clear. Left foot first, healer first. All right. And that doesn't, and doctor, who's the doctor? You're the doctor. You're the doctor of your body. You're the doctor of your life. That is where we start. So I know many of us want to skip now to the whole ascension process and join Tyler's Jedi training, go through it and learn, but start right now by taking care of your vessel, your temple, and purify your body and fast. Check out Tyler's programs. Join the groups, go through the stages in the right order. So, bro, tell us, where do people go to find out more information about? I know you got a 3-day burnout challenge, which really is one of the best ways to start to fast. Can you tell us a little bit about where to start, please?
Yeah, so the 3-day burnout challenge will be a web event that basically gives the foundational principles of what do we need to do to prepare ourselves for a simple, like, dip your toes in the water, get a 3-day fast under your belt. Because in that 3 days, like I said, you're going to be burning visceral fat. You're going to be producing stem cells. There's so many factors of things that are going to happen. And you probably know just as well that anybody who does a 3-day fast, if you prepare for it right, you do it right, you break it right, it's going to be a life transformational experience for people who've never done a fast before. So we essentially run a web event, give all that information, support everybody, put everybody into a group. And we have a product pack that they get. That's all the things that are necessary to prepare, the things you need to do while you're fasting, and then a little bit of what to do after. And it's essentially a 3-day weekend where everybody goes through this burnout challenge together. We call it the burnout challenge because so many people, are wanting to build a business and have kids and just push, and maybe running on coffee or running on some form of stimulants just to keep going. And if anybody can take this 3 days to actually just think of it as a rest, actually just taking 3 days off of everything, resting, but true rest is giving your digestive system a break and allowing your body to clean out all the excess. And then coming out of that in the right way, it's going to give you, months of feeling better and preventing the burnout from happening. So I'll be talking about that on your stage, and I won't really be releasing or doing anything until that time.
Yeah, excellent. In the meantime, where do people go to learn more about your work, bro?
Yeah, just tylertolman.com. You can get on our mailing list. We do tours, we do web events consistently. We have online products that people can go through if they really need to heal. Because some people are really suffering right now and they can't wait. They really need to get started somewhere. So we do have, heal yourself at home. Heal thyself at home is like a product that we have that people can get started and literally start ticking off to-dos and getting rid of toxicity and incorporating things like intermittent fasting, the right types of foods at the right time, all those sorts of things.
Beautiful. Again, firstly, going through this and understanding these protocols, I would highly recommend for everybody that's watching and listening, go back and listen to this again. Pause it when you feel the truth bumps. Take notes on what you're hearing. Write down what you want to achieve in the next 12 months with your body, with your temple. For many years, my loved ones, including my family and my team, when they've had people that they love that have gone through health scares and diagnoses that aren't necessarily good, I've said, go to Tyler, do his fast. Once you've done the fast, come and see me, because then I know that they've taken care of the first step. And so I want to say thank you, brother, for being with us today. I'm excited to have you on our stage. I'd like to reschedule you to come back on the podcast and talk about the whole Jedi Ascension side of things if you're interested.
I'd love to. Now, obviously, that's my jam. That's where I'm, going to have the conversation. I love the health stuff. I love the fasting. I love helping people. And, I'm also very passionate about this next level conversation as well. And thank you for having me.
And yeah, my pleasure, bro. And a little golden nugget for those watching and listening. When I do, just hang out in my house, or I'm cooking in the kitchen, I'm doing something, I go to YouTube and I just go to YouTube and type in the Emerald Tablet of Thoth. And then you'll find it, and you can download it via YouTube if you have YouTube Red or Premium or whatever it's called. You just listen to it. For example, I'm in Dubai now. I'm on a plane tomorrow, and what I'll be doing is breath work and fasting. I'm going to sit on the plane. I'm going to geek out with my whole cape, my silver cape, to avoid the radiation, and I'm going to be meditating to the Emerald Tablet of Thoth. So call us weird and geeks, but again, at least we live amazing lives. So check out the Emerald Tablet of Thoth on YouTube. Get the book, buy the book, read the book, and do not forget to start where you need to start, left foot first, with fasting. And a great way to do that would go to Tyler Tolman, TOLMAN.com, and be sure to sign up to the Quantum Summit, where Tyler's going to be speaking and presenting. And once you've earned the right because you've done the fasting, you've taken care of yourself, and if you're interested, we can talk about taking the next step. Brother, bless you, my man. It's great to hang out. Awesome to see you again, and can't wait until the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Tyler Tolman, everybody.
Have a good day.